I got to make sure to turn all these things on right. I got to make sure to turn everything on right. Thank you, Peggy, for that very kind introduction. I wanted to start just by showing a little video from Minnesota Public Radio that kind of explains ranked choice voting in a very simple fashion.
Pick your favorite color.
The ranked choice voting way.
Instead of voting for just one color, you get to rank your top 3.
Well, purple is the best, but if I can't have purple, I want blue. And if neither of those wins, I guess I can live with orange.
Now, let's count up everybody's votes.
Under ranked choice voting rules, it's not enough just to get the most votes. You need a majority.
More than 50% of the votes.
Purple's ahead, but it has only 7 votes.
It needs at least 11 to win.
So we eliminate the color in last place.
Sorry, Orange fans, we're going to your second choice.
2 more for green,
1 for purple.
but no color has 11 votes yet.
Still no majority.
Bye-bye,
blue.
1 more for purple,
4 for green.
and we have a winner.
The ranked choice voting way.
That's good. Now I'd like to, if we could show that slide. Now, Les Guerra just sent.
Here's the thing I never want to have to do again. Vote the lesser of two evils. But
I think we're
every
playing.
time an election rolls around, we end up with the same 2 choices, over and over.
I think
and
you can
over
just.
again. Instead of positive.
You can just close that off, I think. We just want to show this slide. Okay. Les Guerra just texted me this slide about 10 minutes ago, saying, asking if he was, can I do it this way? Asking if he's had too little sleep or if he's right that this is 100% wrong. Anyway, I'm going to get into this a little bit. The Alaska Division of Elections, I think, has been doing a pretty good job, but he is right. This slide is wrong and very misleading to suggest that there's a state senate, that there's any legislative ranked choice voting in the primary. There's no ranked choice voting in the primary except for the U.S. House race. And some people are going to look at this and get the wrong idea, and they need to correct this, because this is a serious problem. And obviously, the special general ranked choice voting applies only to the U.S. House. This thing would have been okay had they mentioned it as a U.S. House race, not a state Senate race. This thing's confusing enough to, and that needs to be corrected. Again, the Division of Elections, I think, is doing a pretty good job, and we'll get to some examples of that a bit later. Could we start that PowerPoint? All right, I just wanted to, this is from a column, actually, my brother wrote. Well, he quoted this newspaper article in a column 40 plus years ago about politicians at the fair in 1978. And this really has nothing to do with ranked choice voting, but to me, it's funny, so I like it. Now, in this instance, Charles Sulzer, who is running for delegate, took, as you can see, made his position quite clear on prohibition. And his position was, I will positively be governed by the will of the majority of citizens of Alaska. I pledge myself that if elected delegate, I will do everything in my power to carry out the will of the people on this question. So where does he stand on prohibition? He stands with the people. And before you think that maybe that's, let's see, how am I going to do this? How do I advance this? This is a more recent item. This is from 2 days ago. And this is a rough transcript of an interview between James Brooks of the Alaska Beacon and Governor Mike Dunleavy. And the question was a fairly simple one. It's even off the top. You don't see it. But the question was, does Governor Dunleavy support a constitutional convention? which is going to be on the ballot in November. And his answer is worthy of Charles Sulzer. I would advise them, like I do in every vote, to vote their conscience and do their homework and make that decision for themselves. I don't tell people how to vote. In other words, he stands with the will of the people. So, I don't like answers like this.
I didn't hear you. What did you say?
I think we're hearing something else.
Not particularly why. It was what?
That sounds like Michelle. Is that Michelle?
Yeah.
Yep. Oh, okay. All right. Anyway, let's move on to the topic here. I'm not doing this right. Okay. A few weeks ago, former President Trump was in Anchorage and he referred to ranked choice voting as a rigged system. And he was wrong. It's not a rigged system. And he said, this was his description. So-and-so had 5 votes for 5th place, so we are going to give them the victory. Well, this is completely made up. This is wrong. He was just speaking. He wasn't telling the truth. To say that this is a rigged system is not true, and it rings of what he said when he ran for president and what he still says about the 2020 election. And it's not a good thing to be spreading misinformation like that when it's not a good thing to be spreading misinformation, but this is based on nothing. This is based on a fear of the news system and using false information to attack it. Oh, I'm going the wrong way, am I? No, I am going the wrong way. Shoot. My brother was a lot better at this than I am. So, okay. I'd like this quote from Jerry Macbeth. In his, academic way, he said, okay. Anyway, did I do that? Oh, okay. All right. Well, anyway, Trump's remarks were mostly hooey, which I guess is sort of, it's particularly about ranked choice voting. I'm not referring to other things that he was talking about. Where are we? Okay. So let's get into this a little bit. The new world is very confusing to me. I feel like the caveman lawyer. I don't know what the hell's going on. Okay. Why am I going the wrong way? Okay. Now, this is a quote from another person who has attacked ranked choice voting. And this is from a representative, a state representative, who is making the point that the problem with ranked choice voting is that it eliminates the so-called vetting process that we had with the primary system. Now, I might listen to that kind of argument, but I won't listen to it very much from him. This is from David Eastman. And so if we have a vetting process in the primary, it certainly didn't work very well with him. And there is a lot of the objections to this system are that it's new, people don't understand how it works, and it's confusing. And all those things, they're all true. But I think it has some real merit to it that might work and might work well if given a chance to survive. One of the things I'm afraid about is that there will be a reaction and that the legislature will eliminate this system before too long, because many people who are part of the status quo do not like these changes, because the changes definitely do weaken the political parties. Oh, come on. Okay. In terms of being confusing, in this story, again, the Alaska Beacon story by Lisa Fu, which is a really good story on the Senate race, talks about how there's really a race for fourth place in the primary here with Murkowski, Chewbacca, Chesbro, and who's going to finish fourth. There's a large number of options. The reason I mentioned this story, however, was because of what some political experts are quoted as saying in this. Oh, come on. Does it matter, right? Now, this is down in the bottom of the story. Ivan Moore is quoted as saying, it's completely irrelevant who finishes fourth. Art Hackney says it's immaterial, and they're both wrong. And they've both been around Alaska politics for a long time. Why they would say this is beyond me. Ephraim Froelich, whose name I probably can't pronounce, is right about this. The fourth place finisher in that Senate race is vitally impactful because the fourth place finisher is going to be eliminated, and the second place votes cast for that person could have a deciding impact on who wins the race. And I am kind of afraid that when you have political people saying things like this, it doesn't help our situation much. And I don't know if Moore and Hackney have thought this through, because it's quite material who finishes fourth in that race. If it's a very, very conservative person, that will help Kelly Chewbacca. If it's a more liberal person, it will help Lisa Murkowski or Pat Chesbro. So it'll have an impact, because there's a very good chance that no one's going to get 50% in that race in the first round. So these are all things we need to be kind of aware of, and I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I need like somebody to tell me what to do with this stuff, like, you know. Okay. One of the arguments that you'll hear a lot, and there's actually some reason to believe this, is that the ranked choice voting system forces candidates to try to appeal to a broader audience. And that then the argument goes, it will lead to more moderate elected officials. Now, this is a theory, and but it is based on the idea that candidates will really need to attract second place votes. They need to attract, they need to reach out to people that don't think they're the first, that they really don't, they need to reach out to people who really don't want them to be elected. Because in many cases, you're not going to get to 50% plus one without getting some lukewarm supporters. This is a really new way of thinking for politicians, and most of them who are involved in races that are going to be impacted by ranked choice voting, which are the races, by the way, with more than two candidates. Most of them have not really adopted this, and I don't know that voters have adopted it or adapted. Adapted is a better word, yeah. But here's Mary Peltola making this argument. And so I don't think this recognition is going to sink into people's brains this year. I think it may take a while. Perhaps I'm wrong. I think that once the ballots are issued for the general election, the discussion will narrow and the debate will be clearer. Now, the other aspect of this is, and today in my column, in my blog, I mentioned an analysis by Jeanette Lee, a former newspaper reporter who now is a researcher for Sightline, and she's done a very good analysis of the U.S. House race. And she makes note that the two Republicans in the House race, Sarah Palin and Nick Begich III, are not really attacking Mary Peltola very much. They are to some degree, but the attacking is being done by other people, such as the Republican Party, which sent this mailer out last week. But it really is with the maybe not official approval of the candidates, but they certainly don't mind this happening. But they don't want to be necessarily associated with it. Why? Because there is some recognition on the part of Nick Begich, at least, that he needs a few voters who don't think he's the best choice. And this is a really hard thing for us to learn about. I think it may reduce polarization. That is what proponents of this system say. And since it's a law, I think we should try it. There's some other examples of this. Palin and Begich have not been afraid to go after each other. Begich has attacked Palin on ACEs and on the out-of-control spending, the usual items, and on the masks, her participation of the Masked Singer, and referring to her as a quitter. And a friend of mine yesterday actually mentioned to me that he thought a good slogan for Begich would be to say, vote for Sarah Palin. She's used to serving part of a term already. Well, and so whoever wins the special general election will serve for 5 months, 4 or 5 months. And it will give that person some advantage. I don't think it's going to be a huge advantage, however, because I don't think it'll be decided on the first round. Either Palin or Begich is likely to be eliminated on the first round. And I'm not sure who's going to win that, actually. And I'm not any good at calling elections, so I don't. So this is too small to read. But I got the sample ballots. They are, if you haven't voted already, I did the early voting at the state office building. It's very easy to do. This ballot is actually fairly simple. There's a lot of names on the ballot, and again, that's because we didn't do the normal, or the vetting, so-called vetting process from the primaries that existed in the past. But the ballots are quite simple, with the primary election on one side and the U.S. House race on the other side. Now, and again, only on the back side of the ballot, that's the only race in which ranked choice voting is going to take place this year, this month. Some people have asked about write-in, space for write-in candidates. And yes, you can write in candidates. They will not be counted unless the candidate has registered as a write-in candidate with the Division of Elections. And so far, 3 fairly minor candidates have registered as write-in candidates, and they're not going to win. No significant candidate has registered. And the most significant candidate in the race, who's not Begich, Palin, or Patola, is Tara Sweeney, who was finished 5th, but after Al Gross dropped out, it was too late to add a person to the ballot. Anyway, these ballots are simple. Still, there's going to be people to show up who don't know what's going on. And that's not new, right? That always happens at elections. This year, there'll be more people who fill this out incorrectly. There's all sorts of things you read about. People saying, oh, vote for Nick Begich 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. Go ahead and do that. Yeah, okay, well, that doesn't help you. I don't think that invalidates the ballot. It doesn't. it doesn't work, but I mean, it's not going to be counted. I'm sure some people are going to fill in all three of these. Anyway, this requires a higher level of citizen involvement than the previous election system, and that's one of the big difficulties. There really are no great institutions that are helping people, forcing people to learn this. And it's left up to the individual whether or not they have any motivation, you know. And people whose only motivation is whether or not how big the dividend is are not going to study this and figure it out. The real problem, the real question will be, and I shouldn't say it's a problem, but the real challenge will be in the November election, when all of the races will be ranked choice. And again, just to make it clear, also on the primary is the U.S. House race for the full term. And in those, I'm not bothered by the idea of having you know, what looks like a page from a phone book. Of course, you don't have phone books anymore, but I'm not bothered by that, because if you're doing what you should be doing as a citizen, you should be able to know who you're going to vote for, and not leaving it up to small numbers of people who in the two political parties that decide that for you in advance. So that's the way I look at it. We have, and so anyway, and complicating this all, there was a good story in KUAC today about the changes in the Fairbanks polling places. And there's a smaller number, and you really got to know where many of them are not in the same places before because they've been somewhat consolidated. And it sounds like a decent reason for the consolidation. Division of Elections is recommending people check out the sample ballot online, and I'd highly recommend that as well. And print it out, fill it out for yourself, so when you go in to vote, you know exactly what you're doing. That's not a bad idea, even though it sounds maybe kind of elementary, but I think it's not a bad idea. But just remember, again, because of the discussion about ranked choice, some people are going to be voting for more than one, despite the vote for one instructions. The one comment I heard from someone who voted today was that maybe the words primary election should be in larger type on this. Because, so this is the front of the ballot, and this is the back of the ballot. Yeah. But again, on that, don't write in someone unless the person's an actual registered to be a write-in candidate. Now, if you're a Mick Begich supporter and you can't stomach the idea of voting for Sarah Palin or Mary Peltola, either as second or third, the reason you might reconsider that is if you vote for Palin or Peltola on as a second choice, that'll have no impact on you expressing your opinion about Begich. And that vote only comes into play if Begich is eliminated. Likewise, if you're a Mary Peltola supporter and you find Begich and Palin equally distasteful, the reason you might consider voting for them, one of them at least, is to have your vote counted when there's a second, in the second round. And there's likely to be a second round. And it will come down to Mary Peltola is out. Would you rather have Nick Begich or Sarah Palin? If you have no opinion on that, if you think either that that's a 50-50, you don't care, then don't vote for them. But if you value one over, if you rank one over, put one over the other, then you should. This is going to be a hard mindset to develop. And I got to admit, this is a very hard thing for me to accept too. it's going to be hard for me to vote for some candidates that I really don't like and have kind of written about extensively. So anyway, but going through the rest of the local districts, so we have 31, and the legislative race there, Senate, is Jim Matherly and Scott Kawasaki are the two key people, and there's a third person, a Republican who I don't know, Alex Jaffrey. And state rep is Bart LeBon is running for re-election, challenged by Kelly Nash and Maxine Dilbert. So that's 31, and that's sort of the east half of the city. And then what am I doing? 32, the west half of the city. The state Senate race is Kawasaki, Alex, and Matherly. And this is what the seat that Steve Thompson was in. And so Tim Givens, Will Stapp, and Van Lawrence are there. What's that?
Jaffrey's listed again. It's the same Senate district.
Oh, maybe I'm doing it wrong. Anyway,
Oh, right there.
okay. 33, Mike Prax is unopposed, and the Senate race is Rob Myers, John Bennett, and a Arthur Surkov. 34 is the other part of that district. Nate DeMars, Grier Hopkins, and Frank. His last name begins with a T. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Tomaszewski, right? You get that right. And then the big change in the local districts really is the Gulfstream Valley is now in this immense rural district. And Mike Cronk is running against Angela Fowler. And that's a big change. So the Gulfstream Valley will be in a district with a vast rural part of the state. Okay. This is all on the state elections website. I encourage people to look at this just to gain some understanding of it if you haven't been checking on this. I wanted to stop in a couple minutes here, and then we can have questions. When Michelle asked me about speaking on this, I think it was her idea to talk on this topic. I was rather presumptuous to say I would know whether or not ranked choice voting is going to work, and I think it certainly could work. It has definite advantages over the old system, but there will be a lot of Frank Costanza-like whining and moaning about it because of it's different and it requires education and learning. There was a column in the Wall Street Journal a couple days ago by a young lady who's from Wasilla, who is a intern this summer at the Wall Street Journal, and referring to that this is making Alaska politics a joke. It's not true. Wall Street Journal editorial page is notorious for, kind of being extremist. I think the joke angle came in because of the coverage of Santa Claus. And that, to me, does not make this a joke. I mean, everybody writing about this decided that Santa Claus was funny, so yeah, we'll write endless stories on Santa Claus. And Santa Claus got hundreds of thousands of dollars of free publicity. But that to me, that doesn't make this a joke. This is not. This is a, and I think for the general election, after this primary is over, the general election, that's going to be a highly contested race with Palin, Begich, Peltola, and Tara Sweeney. Those are the four likely candidates. Okay, so I think that was all I wanted to touch on. I know there's some people here who know more about this than I do or have questions, and may or may not have answers, but we'll try to have a discussion. So.
And I'm going to be coming around with the microphone so that those that are live streaming can hear your questions as well. So I'll hand it up here.
I recently went through the co-chair training for election workers, and one of the things that's going to happen is if you vote incorrectly, when you insert your ballot into the
Well, let's think, I mean, that race alone won't count. The other people you vote for on the ballot, they wouldn't throw out the entire ballot.
No, it won't.
Just for that race?
On that one candidate, it was voted incorrectly. So there's no way of identifying whether it's your first or second or third or fourth choice. So they assume it's a no-way vote.
Is that also going to take place with, when you vote for a first choice and then a fourth choice?
Yes.
Is somebody going to be assigned at each polling place to stand at the machine?
Yes, we will have people standing right at the machine.
Okay, well, that's good.
So when it bounces back out, and they go, why did it do that? You go, well, the machine says you overvoted on something.
Yeah.
Do you want to take your ballot back and destroy it and start over? Or do you want me to just override and put it on through?
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. I think that's a really good idea. It's going to slow the process down, though. Yeah.
I do. So if you think Tara Sweeney's going to be, you're talking about the primary, she'll be possibly fourth.
No, not on the primary. She's not on the ballot in the primary because of the way this happened.
She's in the primary for the full 2-year term.
Right.
Yes.
That's what I'm.
Pardon me. You're right.
I thought that's what you were referring to.
Yes, yeah.
Because she's not a candidate at this point for write-in.
Right. She is not a candidate she is not a candidate for the write-in in the special general election, which is just for the 4-month or 5-month term.
And yet she's got about a week if she wants to. What's your feeling on it? Do you think she will?
No, I doubt it. I doubt it because,
I think the deadline has passed.
yeah, well, it's supposed to be 5 days. It's supposed to be, and I'm not sure if that's 5 days before early voting started or 5 days before the election. It's probably 5 days, yeah.
It's the 11th.
Yeah.
Well, according to the paper this morning. It was the 11th is the deadline.
Yeah. It might be to her disadvantage because I think at this late date, it'd be hard for her to get that, to generate support, so. Ron?
Yeah, Dermot, we all know how contentious the last presidential election was with just 2 candidates running. So I'm wondering how contentious it might be going forward just on a local area with so many people being able to vote on the ranked choice. Well, we have 3, but is that going to create more lawsuits, more people disgruntled because their candidate didn't win or the candidate didn't win? That's my concern about ranked choice voting. I like the idea, but I don't know. Your thoughts?
I mean, Ron, that's a really good question, and it's probably a thing to be concerned about, especially because some candidates, Kelly Chewbacca in particular, has been raising the question of, well, we're going to have election, we're going to have people, watching the polls, et cetera, and trying to create suspicion about how things are proceeding. And that's unfortunate that she's doing that. But that kind of ties into the whole, phenomenon we have of candidates aligning themselves with Donald Trump's lies about who won the 2020 election. And so, yeah, I think that is a concern. Hopefully it won't be a big, a major one, but since people are going to win on the second round in many cases, not in the legislative races generally. We only have one legislative race in which a person will be removed from the primary, through the primary, and that is the replacement for Adam Wool. I believe there's 5 candidates in that race, and so one of them will be removed, and 4 will go on to the general election ballot. I don't know what to do about building trust, but that's a problem.
Hi, Dermot.
Hi, Jim.
We've both been around here long enough to know about all of the little silly things that happened in the past. This is not the only time that we've had to make a choice between a number of candidates. Not unlike ranked choice voting.
Yeah.
And name recognition was a big part of it. Not to make Fred Brown, but he was always the sixth vote getter. Because people recognized the name, even though they might not realize who he was and what he stood for. And that is a continuing problem here too. We don't know what a lot of these people stand for. That's why I like the ranked choice. Because you can't end up with just 4 or 5 people to fully analyze the general election and not have to analyze all of them in the primary.
Right. Jim, I think that's a really good point. We did have multi-member House districts until 20 plus years ago. That was done away with.
And I'm sure missed that.
I think it definitely reduced the power of the Fairbanks delegation by making it less unified, because now with these individual districts, there's not as much of a reason to work together sometimes. For instance, we've had some legislators who don't really care about the University of Alaska because the University of Alaska is not in their district. And the critics of the districts said that it favored the Democrats. I'm not sure that's true. I think the Democrats won at that time because of of demographics were different. But you're right. I think I recall maybe a dozen or 15 House candidates would be on, and the top 6 would go forward. So, yeah, Mike. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
My name is Jana Miller. If you would indulge me, I can show people how to check their polling location online. She's got it ready to pull up on Zoom here.
Sure. Yeah. That would be a good thing to show people. Yes.
Okay. So can you put that on the screen? If you go to elections.alaska.gov, the Division of Elections website will appear. There it is. Okay, this is what it looks like on your desktop. On your phone, you just see basically the left half of the screen. If you scroll down into that dark blue box, in the middle of that box it says View New Interactive Map.
Okay, yeah, here, right? This one?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You click on that map. It just gives you this hello. You can click OK in the lower right corner. Then a map comes up, and on your phone, the stuff on the right is down below the map. But you can type in any physical address on the right under precinct lookup, and it will tell you what district you're in and where you vote. And this has changed for a number of people, so it would be a good idea to go verify where you vote.
Excellent. I'm really glad this is really good. Yeah, that's a very good service, and it's one of the many things that the Division of Elections has been doing right, and they've done a lot of I don't have that many complaints about what they've done. They've tried to put out a lot of information about ranked choice voting. I hope people are paying attention. Mike.
Mike Walry here. This is more of a comment in terms of the question about lawsuits.
Yeah.
There's going to be lawsuits over this, and they're not going to be, I'm sure there'll be silly lawsuits, but I think there's some real serious problems that, and I respect, and I really think the Division of Elections has done a wonderful job, but they're running into real problems in 2 major areas, and that is in the rural areas, particularly the linguistic minorities. The Voting Rights Act, Section 2 still applies, and nobody has a handle on how that operates except for one issue, and that is that the state of Alaska is under a consent decree to reach out and translate all of this, particularly into Yupik. And having worked in the Yupik areas, I can't imagine a more frustrating task than trying to put ranked choice voting into Yupik. But the second issue has to do with that I see coming and probably be for litigation will be over the mismarking of mail-in ballots. I really like the idea of the machines, and boy, I wish they could figure out some way to make that for mail-in, but I think we're gonna see that too.
You mean mismarking in the sense of
People
writing,
being
putting in 2 circles or something, or?
filling in 2 circles, yeah. Yeah, because
Yeah.
on mail-in, there isn't.
Okay. Oh, that's a good point. That service is not available to the mail-in, and that, yeah.
And over the last few years, there's been a real effort from the political campaigns to encourage mail-in voting. So it's an exacerbated problem. That's
Yeah.
just a comment.
Are there any other questions?
No,
For early voting, that won't be a problem, because if you're doing it right there
Wait a
after
second,
the
hang on.
wait. Okay.
I was just saying, for early voting, that still will not be a problem, because you're going to physically insert your ballot if you are doing this at division elections or at any other early voting place. I think that's the only place you can do it right now, but
Yeah.
you still have the benefit of the machine kicking it back and giving you a second chance.
Well, I guess unfortunately, I do think Mike brings up a very good point here. There's going to be many thousands or tens of thousands of people in rural areas that haven't heard much about this. And when you say it's hard to translate, you mean because it's a difficult concept to get across?
No, you pick,
Oh yeah. Oh, sorry. Just a second.
linguistic problem.
Yeah. Well,
No, it's a linguistic problem, because you're talking about an if-and logic that UPIC doesn't correlate in the same way. So in order to say, if you don't get to do X, what do you do at that point? That's easily expressed in UPIC to UPIC people, but it's really difficult if you're trying to translate that from English into UPIC. And I've got a little experience with that one.
Yeah. You know, what do people think about this notion of voting for somebody you really don't like? Because that is in a way something that's what's happening here. You have to get over the idea, you know, that you won't ever possibly vote for X, you know?
So it's kind of interesting, because now that there are only 3 people on the ballot, I know that you can skip one ranking and all of your other 3 rankings will be counted. It's tempting to me to have a number 1 rank, skip number 2, and have a 3 and a 4. I don't know that it matters, or what effect that would have.
Yeah, there are so many. Yeah, I think we shouldn't be focused too much on the special general election, because I really don't think the winner of that comes out of it with a, you know, well, Sarah Palin wants to be called a congressman, so okay, fine. If it's Congressman Palin, I don't think she'll have a big surge of momentum because of this. And so I think the focus should be on the November election, but it will involve, if this system is to work right, people, you know, we have to have, Mike Dunleavy is going to have to tell people, well, you may not like me, but please vote for me second or third. And, you know, Les Guerra is going to have to say that, and Bill Walker is going to have to say that. So far, they haven't really haven't got into this very much. And I don't think the voters have gotten into it either. So that's, you know, Robert has a question.
You know, it's interesting you were talking that in some ways the incentive is for politicians to reach out to other or broader constituencies. But also, given the polarized nature of our political landscape, it's very likely, following up what Mr. Wallery was saying, was that somebody's going to claim this was rigged, a la Trump, and it will lead to even greater political divisions and some sort of accelerated division in society. Does that seem logical? I mean, given the way things are going, you know, you can easily see a scenario like that.
I think, you know, many great philosophers would see it exactly the same way you do. Yes, that's a real problem. No, that's going to happen. I don't think this is going to make those problems go away. I do continue to wrestle with the idea of, and not for the primary election, but for the later election. Do you vote for 2, 3, or 4? I think it's probably good to at least vote for 2. I don't know if voting for 3 or 4 is. I mean, it's you know, I guess if there are 4 candidates you could stomach, maybe that would be okay. But again, it relates to if your number 1 candidate gets out and your only choices are these 2, do you have a preference? I think if you look at it that way, force yourself to look at it that way, this might be easier to handle. And that's not just for people that with my point of view. It's for people with all points of view.
If I choose to vote for only one person for something, does that vote still count?
Yes. Yes. And that may make. There are many people who are saying that. Geez, I sound like Trump. Anyway, people are saying. Many supporters of Mary Peltola are saying that they're just going to vote for her and not for Begich or Palin. And, you know, I know that comes down to if you think Begich and Palin are exactly the same. And, you know, so.
But if you don't vote for a second, if you don't vote for a second, then your vote doesn't count if it was the bottom one that gets eliminated.
Correct.
Then.
But this is a question of if you vote for Mary Peltola, for instance, right? Right? And you do not vote for Palin or Begich. Let's state it a different way. You vote for Mary Peltola, you vote for Sarah Palin second and leave the third blank. Your vote for Palin doesn't count unless Mary Peltola has been eliminated from the election. So if you force yourself to think of it that way, which is a new thing for us to do, right? I haven't accepted that necessarily emotionally. I mean, not about these candidates, but about this idea. You know, But I think there's merit to this. I mean, it might force us to be more collaborative if we can get past the inauguration of this, which is Mike's right. There's going to be probably lawsuits, and you know, but there were lawsuits in 2010 when Lisa Murkowski ran on the write-in campaign. This situation, I think, will be a little more intense.
Thank
yeah.
you. Ask an interesting brief question. That is there much, ranked choice has been around for 10 or 15 years, Maine and a couple places. Is there much that's instructive from that along these lines, or is it really that to a degree, Alaska is now, and it is, that's why they pressed this, that's why they put it onto the ballot back when, they'd like to introduce the entire country. Anyway, is there much instructive information there from people growing in their understanding of how to vote for ranked choice?
Well, the advocates of the system say there is. I guess I don't really feel qualified to answer that. So I don't really know. I think one thing we should remember is that not to think of our old system as being ideal, just because everybody kind of knew how it worked. I mean, in Alaska, aside from what Jim mentioned before about the legislative races, we had three-way governor races more often than not. Sometimes because of Dick Randolph, sometimes with Joe Vogler, or some, you know. Anyway, and in those three-way races, that made this more of a situation that was really involved some of the same arguments, you know.
And waste your vote.
Yeah. So, but anyway, so I think, you know, this has some. It's definitely going to have problems working it out. But I don't think there's any big conspiracy here to rig the election. I mean, there certainly isn't. So.
I'm a big proponent of ranked choice, but I think what's happened here is that we had this special election, and that is, in my opinion, really messing up the whole process, because now we have all of this voting all at the same time. We've had the first vote, you could only vote for one, and I think that that's been very confusing for people, and I'm afraid that's going to put ranked choice voting in a bad light just for that reason.
I think it has done. It has done so, you know, and some of this is. Look, some of the people who ran in the special primary election to replace Don Young did so as a joke, and more than one person did that. And you know, I think if this persists, if this lasts, that problem will dissipate a bit. You know, but anyway, but all we had to do was pick one out of 49 or 50 or whatever it was. So it wasn't exactly that confusing. So, Paula.
It is now.
Well, I mean, it's confusing, but if you look at the ballot, that simplifies it. The ballot is pretty simple. One page is the primary, one page is the special general, the back of that page. So that's, I really would urge everybody to check the ballot, sample ballot. Paula?
Good idea. Remember, there may be no easy answer to this or any answer to this that anybody in the room would know, but most people never heard of ALEC, American Legislative Exchange Council. Most of the laws are state laws. They've been around for 50 years, and they have had the greatest influence across the nation on what state laws are submitted and passed. So my question was, has ALEC, not that they've weighed in on this, and what effect are they having on it?
I don't know. But you know what? Right-wing people and left-wing people have been critics. And I think it's largely party insiders in both the Republican and Democratic Party don't like this idea because it reduces the impact of state central committees, for instance. And it reduces political party, you know, influence. Anyway, there's certainly growing pains with this. Maybe that's the wrong word, but the wrong term here. But there's certainly the adjustment is not going to be without difficulties. So, but I don't know if ALEC has been involved. I don't.
That's the thing. We don't know.
Yeah.
Follow the money. ALEC has the money. When I asked this in Cypress Group on Monday, most of the people didn't know anything about ALEC. Most people don't know anything about ALEC. John Davey said when he was in the legislature, he wondered where all these bills were coming from, and he found out it's ALEC.
Yeah.
And when I asked
having a debate on whether we should raise the minimum wage by a couple of bucks. Ed Flanagan, I said, how does Alec weigh it? Now, the woman who did not want from the university, did not want the wage raised because it would hurt women get lesser paying jobs. Never heard of Alec. And Ed Flanagan knew who was in Alec. And that's the difference.
Yeah. Well, I think we've gone on for about an hour.
You got one more question?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Sorry.
I'm sorry, but I have a technical question. If you vote for a candidate and another in the second round and another in the third round, and your candidate survives and is out in the third round, do they count your option, your choice, the third one? Because you actually had the second choice you wanted. It wasn't counted because your candidate made it through the second round. Does anyone know how that would work? Do you understand what I'm saying? You go 1, 2, 3, get to the third round, you actually had a different candidate, it was your second choice. But this person doesn't lose till the third round. Which one did they pick?
Well, okay, so in this instance, let's talk about Patola, Begich, and Palin, right?
Yeah, okay, that's what we have.
If-
We might have 4 in a race.
Well, we would. Well, we will have 4.
Yeah, so what happens then in that third round?
Your third choice.
Your third choice, so you don't get the second choice then? 'Cause your
Correct.
candidate made it through, so you go to the third choice.
Yeah, only if. Okay, your first choice loses.
Makes it through the first round.
Well, no. Let's say your first choice loses. Then your second choice loses and is out. So then 1 and 2 are out. Then your third choice either loses or not. So yeah, this is hard to imagine in your head. It really is. But I think what we don't really have in Alaska is enough of a discussion and saturation of the public discourse with, details about this, because I think not enough people are interested. And, that's why in November, we're going to have tens of thousands of people show up and do it wrong. And that may be, end up in lawsuits probably, but it's also going to make voting, the general election day in November, a difficult one. So I'm afraid. But anyway, thank you very much for coming tonight.